Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Soulpreneur Secrets podcast. And I am delighted to introduce to you Anastasia Chopeles, who we and I met on LinkedIn just recently, and we had one little chat and realized we had so much in common. So I asked her if she would come on board and talk a bit about her work for you to hear because it's fascinating. So, welcome, Anastasia. It's absolutely lovely to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. I am delighted to be here. And yes, we had a really amazing conversation, and it was like we were sisters from another mother. It was so much fun.
Beautiful, beautiful. So,
So,
do tell us, yeah, share a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are now.
well, when I was 7 years old, my dad brought home a map of the universe. And I looked at it and I said, "What? There are other planets? Wow." I was so excited that I decided to become a scientist at that moment. Can you imagine a 7 year old? I was in the second grade.
No, astrologically, I can see that. Yeah.
So I geared my whole life in that direction. But the other thing that ran kind of parallel in my life is that my great grandmother and my grandmother were what you would call psychic. They both
Oh,
had precognitive dreams that were very accurate all the time. And so I never ever considered that my being able to sense people and sense things to be kind of weird. And it actually helped me because I became a physics professor after. So I did all three. I worked for private industry as a scientist. Then I went and did research at a research institute, and then I became a professor in the physics department.
wow.
And that happened when I was in my late 40s. And I did all of that until I was about 60. And I decided at that point to retire from academia because the other part of me, that psychic part of me, started to push in. And the reason why I got very interested in it, because again, my other interest when I was little was the human body. And I became very interested in health from a very early age. We were in 1960, we were the health nuts down the block, which was way before everybody else. And people would come to our house, and my dad would, uh, be fixing all these whole grain breads and healthy foods. And they go, "What are you, some kind of health nut?" So we started pretty early. And since I was 14, I've been exercising at least an hour a day since then, and I just turned 72. So been been doing this a very long time. So these two things ran parallel. And even though I was interested in staying healthy and my career as a scientist really flourished, I was at the cutting edge of a lot of research in the area of geophysics and mineral physics. And and even though my career flourished, I got very, very ill in my early 40s. And so, no doctors, you've heard this story before, I'm sure a million times, no doctors could ever come up with a solution why I had high blood pressure and why I had big tumors and all of that. And I knew that I had to find a different answer. And at that time, I was living in Germany and met a group of a holistic healing women, shiatsu masseuse and a Reiki healer, and uh, a, the other one was a foot reflexologist. And they kind of got me into this world of alternative healing or energy healing. And I discovered that I really excelled at it. But it wasn't, that was in my mid 40s. And it wasn't until I turned 60 where it was like that calling was so strong that I had to do it. And
Mm.
right. And within 2 months, no, a single month of retiring, I kind of put up my healer flag. And in 2 weeks, I earned $3,000 by healing people. And I thought, Oh, I guess this is a lot easier than I thought. And some of those people that came to me in that very first, they're still my clients. Because I've been keeping them going for a long time. So,
Wow.
yeah, so I developed actually what I call a scientific process because I don't just look at you. I measure using kind of like my sixth sense. I measure things. And I have a process that
Fascinating.
helps. Yes.
Fascinating. So obviously, I mean, as you know, I was a scientist too, and have moved more into um, whatever, alternative, whatever you want to call it. Um, where do you see the link between you as a physicist and you as a healer? Where do you see the overlap?
Well, the overlap really is understanding how. So I studied vibrations of materials. So and I used laser light to measure it. So I understand a lot about vibrations of matter and vibration light. And I even taught this in several physics classes at like University of Nevada and University of Washington. And so I taught the way energy flows, interacts with matter. And so then when I started doing energy healing, I saw the same thing happening because I have this sixth sense. And I started to understand like we have what people call chakras are really a location where we have energy receptors. And this was discovered in the 1990s that the areas of where the chakras are, the nerve endings come from the spine to these areas. And there are things like insulin receptors and glucagon receptors, which is the antagonist of insulin, and endorphin receptors and things like that. They're centralized in these locations. So there's a series of receptors, and I'm sure there are light receptors. And so I started to see that the system that everybody considered woo was actually part of our physical body. And it started to make a lot of sense to me.
Fabulous, fabulous. And of course, we're talking just after Pluto moved into Aquarius yesterday evening for the next 20 years. And for me, that's very much about us finally taking on board that we live in a quantum field and that everything is vibration and that everything is energy. Although it's been known about for 100 years, it's not been in our common conversation. It's not been something that we've based our lifestyles on or anything. And I
Well,
feel,
let me just give
yeah.
you the power of vibration and the power of the information that's in the quantum field. So if we were to take the Earth and collapse all of the empty space out of it, and we know that it's mostly empty space from experiments over 100 years ago, if we collapse it, it ends up being the distance of about 1.5 football fields. So, around 150 meters or 150 yards. Like the entire earth collapsed down to this little dinky size, and all of the empty space is where all of the information and energy is residing. And that's the quantum field.
Awesome, awesome. And how do you see, like, because you said, a lot of people now who are, can't remember the word you said, but they often call it personal growth or personal development, you said. What do you see is happening? What do you see that people, what's the fundamental change that people are going through, do you think?
I think that, so what happened, so, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. And back then, there was very little obesity. Smoking was really huge, and so there was a lot of early deaths due to the consequences of smoking. And so everybody had a reason for people to get sick, right? Oh, they were a smoker, so they got sick and died young. And then as time went on, children became obese. A lot of diseases started to happen. We turned to doctors, and most of these are chronic problems, and chronic problems are not well handled by the medical community. Their choices are Medicaid or operate pretty much. A lot of the doctors now are embracing lifestyle and, you know, are even prescribing meditation and massage, which they didn't do before. And I think that people are now looking more and more, well, if they don't have the answers, who does? Right. And so now people are looking and discovering that their relationships, their wealth, their happiness all depends on what's going on in here. Right. And that's where personal growth happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And how do you link that to, like the physics, the sort of, as a physicist, how would you describe that?
Well, one thing for me, it's all about stress, right?
Mhm.
So, people talk about muscle testing. Well, muscle testing is actually a physiological response to something that's stressful to you. And saying the word no is stressful to people. They don't want to hear no, they want to hear yes. So if you sit there and you're trying to lift some weights that are kind of heavy and somebody says no, you'll drop them. But if somebody says yes, you'll be able to pull them up. And we also know that posture, for example, there's a physiological response to posture. So when you pull your shoulders back and stand up straight, your body is experiencing less stress because if you think about it, you're opening up your area in the front, because when we're under stress, we have a tendency to protect our soft underside. So if you're like this, you're feeling strong. And so your stress on your body is less. And if you sit hunched all day at a computer like this, it's very stressful because that's the defensive posture. And so your adrenal glands go, oh, we're under stress. And they send out cortisol to try and counterbalance it.
Yeah.
So the stress is what I think is the main thing, right? And so when I see these physiological responses due to stress, and then prolonged stress makes people ill, that's why personal development is so important, right? Is to get this right. So you're more resilient, you're able to stand your daily life problems in a you're able to say, I can handle it, I know what to do, or ask for help. Like one of the reasons why I got so sick was I didn't ask for help, because when you're a competent person and you're able to handle a lot more than the average person, you go, oh, I can handle it, but you can't.
So
Right.
what
So
happens, do you think, physiologically when we ask for help?
I think that for a lot of us, the feeling of helplessness is makes us weak, because we think that people won't help us. But I found out I belonged to a self-help group, and I came in one afternoon, and this was when I lived in Germany, and in Germany, jeans for little boys were like $100, very expensive. And I had just brought jeans I bought them at Sears for like $12 a pair, because I would come back and forth and visit my parents, and I would buy like suitcases full of stuff to take back. And my son, who was about 6 or 7 at the time, had gone through all of his jeans and there were holes in them. And I thought, how am I going to afford this? Because I was, single mom. And, and I came into this self-help group. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. My son has just put holes in all of his jeans and I don't have the time to fix them. And the lady just said, I'll do it. So I handed her 4 pairs and she handed them back to me all sewn beautifully. And he was able to wear them. She reinforced the knees so he didn't make holes in them again. And I was blown away by the generosity because I just sat there like upset, not being able to clothe my children well enough. And she just reached out and helped me. And then that changed things for me. It's okay to ask for help. It's
What do you think
okay.
actually happens, like, in the quantum field of vibration or whatever, when we ask for help? Because personally, I think that's what we're being asked to do. Just ask.
Yeah, to ask for help. What do I think happens in the quantum field? Well, I think that all of us are sending out our vibrations all the time. And we're like tuning forks, right? So
Mhm.
you send out this vibration that you need help, and people that have the helper gene in them, they receive it and go, I'll do it. And she ended up being my best friend while I was in Germany. And
Fortunately.
she was the mother I never had, and I was the daughter she never had. She was about 15 years older. And it was a beautiful relationship. I used to
Oh, of
help her out as much as I could too.
course.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So my brain immediately goes into, how does the helper gene pick up on that vibration?
Oh, because it's like tuning forks. If you have two tuning forks that are at the
That's
same frequency
true.
and you ping one, the other one
Yeah,
will ring. Always.
you're right. So when
It's
we
a
ask
it's
for help, because we're asking, the picture in our mind or whatever it is, that the pattern that we are creating with this image of what it is that we need help with, that sets up a vibration which is then picked up by something else that is able to vibrate at that same place.
yeah, the physics word is resonance,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's a big, with the, it was it is the theory of resonance or something. I know it's a big thing in the moment. There's two. There's the law of, that's it, the law of attraction and the law of resonance.
Yeah, so attraction is sending out what you'd like to have in your life, and you whatever resonates with you gets attracted to you. But for me, that seems kind of passive,
Mhm.
right? It's being ready to do the work to bring that in. You have to make it happen. It's not going to happen on its own. But getting clarity on what you'd like to have in your life is really important, because a lot of us don't really know, because people
No,
say, well, what do you like to do for fun? Well, I'm doing what I like to do for fun, right? It's not like I have to go out and, you know, like one of the most fun things we did recently is Disneyland is very expensive. It's like $200 a person to go there. And
I
my,
wasn't planning on going when I come. I've been before.
yeah, but my, my grandson's eighth birthday, he just turned 9 now, but my grandson's eighth birthday came up, and I spoke to my husband. I said, what do you think about taking them to Disneyland? So we took my daughter, and she wasn't married at the time, and him to Disneyland. And he was so adorable. I told him we were going on a surprise trip, and we're going under the bridge that says Disneyland. And he goes, are we going to Disneyland? I never thought we'd get to go to Disney. This
Oh,
is so exciting. We're going to Disneyland. He's very articulate for his age. People think he's an adult when he talks. And then we're going there, and he's like, the whole day, he sees kids crying. He says, don't those kids know that Disneyland is the most awesome place to be? He was, and that was so much fun, right? That for me that's the kind of fun I like to have, is
yes.
enjoying watching I have 3 grandchildren, enjoying watching my grandchildren enjoy life.
Absolutely. And I mean, every child has to go to some sort of Disney World or Disneyland or whatever, don't they? I mean, it's like a rite of passage, really.
Yeah, and I was exactly his age when I went the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Amazing.
back
Oh,
then
it's
it
been
was
going
like
that
5.
long.
Yeah, it opened in the early it opened in the late 50s. And so that was 1961 when we went, because we moved to California in 1960. So that was 1961 when we went. So
Wow.
it was brand new, and I think it cost like $3.25 per person to get in. And that's when we had all the lettered tickets A through E, and the E ones were like going on the Matterhorn, the good rides. So when people say the E ticket means the good stuff.
Amazing, amazing. So I absolutely love that image. I have vaguely heard it before, but it's never really lodged properly. This sense that we are a tuning fork, and that depending on how we vibrate our fork will depend on what is being picked up.
Yes.
Because people, we talk all the time about, raising our vibration so that what we attract, is going to be a similar high sort of vibration.
Yeah, a grouchy person isn't attracted to me, right? I'm happy all the time, right? So a grouchy person thinks I'm being a Pollyanna.
And the thing is that a grouchy person usually experiences the world as being quite grouchy.
Yes, exactly right. Because they're vibrating at that. Like when I was really depressed from being sick and having a difficult marriage, um, when I was depressed, I ended up going to self-help groups, and I didn't like other people that were depressed. So I had to figure out what to do to raise myself up out of it.
Mm. And before we started this call, you mentioned something about the energy of food. You said about it's not the apple you're eating, it's the energy you're eating, which of course must be linked to this tuning fork thing, that if we want our tuning fork to vibrate at its best possible level, its
Well,
highest.
so when people talk about health, they always focus on food and lifestyle, like exercise, don't smoke, don't drink kind of thing. But that's actually kind of down the list of things that matter. Like the
Okay.
first thing, the highest thing that matters is your relationships. The next
Mm.
is your career. Are you satisfied? Are you living your purpose? The third is creativity. The fourth is your spirituality, right? And then the fifth is your sexuality. Are you happy with who you are and who you're with and who you're being? And then sixth is your financial health. Seventh is your mental and emotional health. And then eighth is taking care of your physical health. Can you
Wow, that's
believe
so
that?
low down.
It's slow down, but it's foundational.
Yeah.
So the thing about eating unhealthy foods. So when you eat a food, so remember that analogy I had of the earth, well, not analogy, but I calculated this based on the size of the nucleons and the electrons around an atom and how much empty space there was. So I collapsed all of that. And that the thing that's holding it up is energy. So it's the same with an apple. The apple would be disappear if you collapsed uh, all of the space inside of it. So now you've got this little bit of energy there. So if you think about it, when you spray a pesticide on an apple, for example, you're spraying something that kills something else. So you're spraying death energy onto the apple. So even if you wash off the pesticide, it's still got the death energy in it. Luckily, there are ways around raising the energy of that apple that you've had the pesticide on it, but it'll never be quite the same as an apple that's grown in organic soil, that's never experienced pesticide or any kind of killer. And and even like I have a garden out the back that my dad planted. I'm living in my parents' house. They've owned it since 1967, and they both passed away recently. So I took over the house, and Dad planted all of these trees in the
Mm.
back and raised them organically. But even better yet was he would pick them and hand them to people and say, "Oh, I have this for you." And he'd hand
Mm.
like bags of lemons and bags of apples and bags of apricots to people. And so that is even better because it's grown with love and given with
Yes.
love, right? So
I
that's
was
the
I was
highest,
I was I was thinking that when you said it,
yeah,
you know,
it's the
that
highest
when
frequency food you can ever have. So whenever I eat something out of the garden, I think of my dad and how much he loved it.
yeah. Well, I must admit, um, eating purely organic is it would be a bit of a headache for me it involves quite a lot of driving to get to somewhere to buy it, and I don't have a garden. But what I do is I bless the food that I'm eating. I
Yes.
bless my water. And I feel like, that even though it may, yes, as you say, I think that thing about being sprayed with death, like, I'm
Well,
not sure I like that
but
image,
you're
but
doing exactly. So there are ways to raise the frequency of the food.
yeah.
And one of the ways is to, thank the food for its nourishing properties. Of course, clean it up as best as you can. Thank it for its nourishing properties. Dear God, bless this food. And then the other is to do an ohm over it, because the ohm
Yeah.
raises because it's the sound of the universe.
Mm.
So if you do ohm over the food, you can actually feel the energy of the food expanding as you're doing that.
Oh, that's amazing. I might do an
Yeah.
om over my shopping every time I go shopping.
Yes, there you are. And
That sounds like a really good place to finish because that's a completely new idea. I don't know anybody who oms over their shopping.
that would be awesome, right?
Oh, Anastasia, it's been absolutely delightful.
Oh,
And
thank
I'm
you
so
for having me.
And I'm so
And
excited because we're actually going to meet in person when I come to LA in January. And maybe we'll have something else to share with people then as well.
yeah,
So,
and people can find me at
oh,
Healers
yes.
U. Yeah, at Healers U, HEALERSU.com, like healersuniversity.com. My videos and podcasts, it's always a huge, broad range of topics. And I try to find things that people are really interested in, like things like, first of all, everybody wants to know about energy hygiene. But uh, another thing that people want to know is how to protect themselves, like protect their energy from other people. And some of the questions they're not asking is if they want to have like a healing business, they're not asking they're thinking that they could hire somebody to do the techie work for them, and that doesn't work out as well as they think ever. So they kind of limp along. A lot of them don't want to embrace AI, for example, but AI actually works in your favor. So one of the things I do with AI is I'll record something that I wrote, or I'll write something and then I'll give it to AI and tell it to remanipulate it into using my words into things to make it sound like I wrote the social post and things like that. And
Brilliant.
I'm also needing some help with a program that I'm starting because I'm very digitally competent, right? I've been programming computers since the early 70s.
Wow.
And so I can do everything computer digitally competent, but I also am a healer and understand the physics. And so I am working on initiating a program for spiritual conscious entrepreneurs that want to grow a business. And if you go to healersu.com/feedback, I'd like to have feedback on that too.
Brilliant. Absolutely lovely. Because I know that the
It's not
majority
a,
of people,
Yeah, it's not a sales call. It's a
No,
15 or
yeah,
20
no, but I
minute.
know that the majority of people who are watching this are, you know, most of the people who I talk to are spiritual entrepreneurs, which is why it's called SOU, Soulpreneur podcasts. um,
Excellent.
yeah, so that could be really helpful because, like you say, you know, I'm a creative. I'm really not that good with the tech, and I think that this is something that the majority of creatives and healers and things, you know, are really struggling with the technical side of it
Yeah,
all.
because I would set it up for them. I'm only taking on 10 people, yeah, for that kind of
Amazing. Oh,
program, but I would set it up for them and have it all automatic. So all they have to do is talk into a microphone and press a button, and then everything else comes out of it.
amazing.
Like I
Amazing.
said, I'm a techie geek. I love it.
So it's healers,
Mhm.
HEALERSU.com. Just the letter U
Just the
dot
letter U, because it
com.
stands for Scientific Healers University. When I found healersu.com was available, I said, oh, wow, I'll take it.
Yeah. Brilliant. 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 So thank you so much. And we're all going to be omming over our shopping.
Yes, it makes a difference. And you can ohm in a room or have a recording of an ohm go in a room, and it'll raise the
Mm,
vibe of a room too.
mm. I must admit,
And
I do a lot of omming with the groups that I work with, but I've never tried omming over my food.
awesome. Thank you,
All right.
Deborah, for having me.
Thank
It's been a
you.
delight.